Good evening, everyone. It is your girl, Marcie Thomas, and I am really glad to be with you here again for another episode of Live Well Sister. So first of all, welcome to everyone who's here. We've already got some folks in the room who are sending love. We see you, Speakers Magazine, also known as Dr. Pam Perry. Thank you so much for being here. And for everyone else who's joining us, get ready for what's going to be a really exciting conversation this evening or this afternoon or this morning, depending on when you're catching us. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, and my special guest actually found out she lives and works right down the street from me. So how amazing is that we're in the same community and getting an opportunity to meet and come to you. So if this is your first time with Live Well Sister, as you saw in the opening, we believe in talking about all the various parts of life that actually help us to live well. Because how many of us, sometimes we're living and we're doing all these different things, but we're not necessarily living well. And we really want to have people in this space that are going to help you to get there. And tonight's guest is the epitome of what it means to live well. And I can't wait to dive into our conversation. So our special guest for the evening is Vicki Wright Hamilton, who is not just a keynote speaker and executive coach, but a force of inspiration and a beacon of transformative leadership. As the CEO of VWH Consulting, she wields her profound experience to catapult business owners and corporate leaders to new echelons of success. Her unique brand of strategic brilliance and a deep-rooted passion for nurturing growth makes her a vanguard in leadership and the entrepreneurial sphere. Her journey includes so many wonderful things, some of which we're going to get into, but one of the ways in which she's told her story is through her memoir, Game Phase, a best-selling memoir. As you see, I have it here, so I suggest you grab a copy of it. It is available, as you see, digitally in this beautiful cover. But she talks about her story and her rise as a person who works in the technology field and so much more. So without any further delay, I'm excited to welcome Vicki Wright Hamilton to Live Well Sister. Welcome.
Well, wow, thank you. I am so happy to be here. And I'm telling you, I'm glad to know you're only down the street. So our coffee date is right around the corner.
It's right around the corner, literally. So I have to put this up. We have Dr. Pam Perry saying hi, and thank you, Pamela, for putting the two of us together. We really do appreciate you. We love you and all of the things that you do. And I got to get you on here as well. So be looking for your invite. So for those who aren't familiar with your work, just tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. We can kind of start there. What it is that you do through your work, Vicki.
Sure. And I'm glad you said through work, because let me first say my work does not define me.
Right.
It's only a part of me. But when I think about my work, the foundation of everything I do is I serve. I serve individuals, and every individual is a leader regardless to your title, what you do, how you do it, where you work, where you live, or the occupation you may or may not have. So in doing that, I actually have three basic pillars where I work with leaders. One is in the technology field, where I use a lot of my strategy and things that I know from a technology perspective, and dealing with things that are happening around technology, like AI and all those exciting things that we're hearing about today. And I help them not only strategize about how to do it, but more importantly, how do we deal with people? How do leaders get ready for it? And what does that mean? And my second pillar, I actually do a lot of executive coaching. Now, some of that comes from the companies that I actually do strategy with, and it comes from others. And I have done a lot of coaching with women where I have helped them where it's predominantly been in a couple of areas. One is they're trying to learn how to read the tea leaves of the things that are happening in companies that nobody ever tells you about.
Right.
Or two, they're trying to figure out their next career step. Is it out? Is it up? Is it doing something different? And what does that look like? And the third piece, regardless to which one they come to me for, which is always a part of it, is how am I dealing with my self-worth, my well-being, me as an individual is that investment. The third piece that I do in dealing with leaders is I truly believe in helping entrepreneurs. And in fact, I have a television show that I did helping Black business owners, entrepreneurs, called Strategic Minds Making Money Moves on my YouTube channel. And it's also streamed locally in 7 other markets. But I believe that God intended all of us to be multimillionaires. He expected us to all grow, develop, and make the most we can.
Mm-hmm.
To do that, we have to be given the opportunity. We have to be given the platform. So at my investment, 100%, I invited businesses to come on the stage with me to actually talk about what their business is, whom they serve, what they serve, how to reach them. And then we solved one strategic problem on air. And I have over 72 episodes of being able to do this. So I'm a person who puts my money where my mouth is. Like I said at the very beginning, I'm probably one of those that take it a little bit too far on the but it's only because I love to serve and I love to see people succeed. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. I love that. And as I told you before we came on, the whole concept of living well encompasses so many different things. And as I had a chance to read your book, it's like, oh, I have to just talk to her about what it means to live well, because we have people here in this space that, they might be corporate, they might be entrepreneurs, they may be, retired, they come from different walks of life. But the whole thing about living well is important to each and every one of us. And in your book, Game Plan, you really touch on a lot of those issues. So one of the things, it's a book where you talk about business, but you also share a lot of your personal life and your personal story. So when you decided that you wanted to put a book together, and even as you go out and speak, why is it important for you to include those pieces of your life that sometimes can be somewhat vulnerable to share?
Well, first of all, I want to be authentic and I want to be transparent. But one of the things that bother me the most is we do a lot of sharing the glory, but we don't tell the story. And you didn't wake up and get glory all of a sudden one day. And you didn't live your life without going through trials and tribulations. So let's talk about some of those. Now, I have a very, very strong faith. And I don't ask anybody to believe what I believe, the way I believe. But for me, God, as my Father, said to me, I want you to share your testimony and how you got through your test, because I want you to be able to help somebody else get through it. So when this whole book came about, and there's a story about how it came about. I didn't just decide to write it one day. But when the story came about, I knew it was imperative that I was sharing the total me. I'm not going to just talk about the great parts, the things that went really well, because that's not life. Life has the hills and the journeys and the valleys, and we need to share them. So I knew it was important that if one person just read this book and it helped them to get through one challenge, it was worth every dime, every penny, every piece of paper, and all the ink that it was written on.
It is. And thank you so much. Yes, the full title is Game Face Corporate Success Strategies of a Trailblazing Tech Warrior. That's the full name. Thank you for that. But yes, and I love that you started at the beginning, really, when as a very young woman, and some of the things that you had to, encounter or deal with or overcome. So tell us just a little bit, because there's something that we have in common, which is a military connection, but just tell people a little bit about your early life and how some of the things you dealt with even then helped you to become a person who's very resilient.
Well, so yes, I am an Air Force brat. In fact, I was born out in the middle of nowhere in a field on an Air Force, where they were trying to get my mother to the hospital. But of course, I had to be stubborn and had to come before they got there. And then I had the nerve enough to be a breech baby. So
wow.
She didn't have any medicine. She didn't have anything. But I came out behind first. I used to tease her all the time and said, I was a pain in the butt when I was born. And I'm still a pain, aren't I? And she said, no, baby, you were my precious butt when you were born, and you still my precious one now. But I was born out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, my father was an officer in the Air Force. And anybody who knows anything about the history of military, as Black officers, that was something that you didn't have. And one of the things of being a Black officer is that you got the opportunity to live on bases, and you did get special housing. Even though, it was different than what your counterparts had, but you still had that opportunity. And my father ended up getting, we moved around all the time. I mean, one country to another, one city to another. The one thing that I attribute part of my resilience to today, that I will never, ever be able to express in a way that everybody can identify with, but the ability to accept change. Because moving around all the time, all I knew how to do was pack a bag and let's go. Unpack a bag and let's go. I never got to have that feeling of where you grow up in a community. You grow up with people and you can say, oh, I went to elementary school with them, and middle school and high school. I get so jealous of my husband because he did. And I was like, I have no idea what that feels like. Now, the good side is that by being able to change, not only did it make me resilient, but my networks are everywhere.
Right.
I got networks all over this world.
Right.
And people say, how are you so connected? Well, when you live in all these different countries and you make all these connections and you continue to get around, that is one of the benefits of being able to do that. And that definitely has contributed to part of my resilience, in terms of growing up. But as a young child, and I had some awesome opportunities, my father and my mother worked very, very hard to make sure our lives were better than theirs. My father grew up in the projects in Cincinnati, Ohio, raised by a single mom. My mother grew up in Harlan, Kentucky, raised by her mom and dad, and came from literally nothing. So they wanted to make sure that we got things that they didn't. And in doing that and providing those opportunities meant that during the time, because I'm a little bit on that more mature side, during that time, all the adversity that they faced, I witnessed. All the adversity that, of being a Black man and what that meant, and incidents that happened as a child that I watched. Right. The adversity of my mother as a Black, fair-skinned woman and not being even accepted by other Black people. I understood what that meant. The dark skin versus light skin. My dad was a little darker. My mother was light. And so understanding all of these dynamics in the midst of civil rights movements, right, in the midst of marching, working with Martin Luther King and Slater and Andrew Young and all these people that, yes, they came to my house, they sat and had dinners with us and things like that. But going through these changes and going, wow, how can people that look like me treat us that way? Much less the people who don't. So the points of confusion of what does this mean? And my mother was very adamant to let us know it's people first, not race. She would never allow me to use my race, my sex, or my gender as an excuse. What she was willing to do is to say, yes, biases occur. Discrimination happens
Mm,
every single day. But discrimination can happen by all people, not
right.
just.
That's
And
true.
you know, when we were marching and we saw just as many, when we saw some white people out there marching with us, just like black people, that's when she brought it together for us. But understanding blacks only and white only, I was a little confused. I was like, well, then why do we have this?
Right.
If people can come together, what does this mean? And so, as a child, watching these things and watching things happen, and my parents not allowing me to use the negativity as an excuse.
Right.
You will never be able to say you can't because you will, right? You will never be able to say that it's only this that gave me this opportunity. It's
Mm,
going to be your qualifications. Because as you get older and you run into this adversity, I need to make sure you're confident in who you are and that you understand what you can do and not let anybody tell you any differently. So it was through all of those young years of watching those things and growing up that played a significant value in acceptance of change, resilience, understanding, appreciating diversity and equity from a very young age, but also recognizing you can't diminish discrimination when it happens.
absolutely not. One of the other stories that I love and was inspired by is actually one that you encountered in school where you had an issue with an instructor who told you what you couldn't do or what they thought you couldn't do and how you responded to that. Tell us a little bit about that.
So at this point in time, my father was out of the service then. He was a professor at the University of Dayton, and he was the only black tenured professor in finance, which was very much unheard of. But around the corner from his office is where the chairman of my department was. Now, I have to say this. The only school I claim, the only places in my heart is Spelman College. I went to Spelman. Once a Spelman night, always a Spelman night.
That's
And my
right.
mother used to be dean of Spelman. So it's in my blood. So my blood is blue. Let's just start there. And it was not only because of mama, but my blood being blue that they never let me forget as being a black woman what I could do.
That's right.
So anyway, this particular professor, my dad made me come home. That's the only reason I left. He made me come home because I could go to school for free because he worked there. So after all, it was like, okay, fine. I hated it. I fought it. Didn't want to go, but I had to do what I had to do for my parents. So anyway, I took a test. I was majoring in management information system, which is a combination of business and computer science. And I took it. I studied. I'm a studier. But
Mm,
one of the things about me as a studier is I have to work hard at it. It doesn't come easy.
okay.
I mean, I have to really work at getting knowledge. And so all I did was work and go to school. I didn't do anything else. That was my life. So after taking this test and I got my score back one day, I failed it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to go home. And I know somehow daddy's going to find out I
Mhm,
failed this test. I'm
mhm.
in trouble. So we always had family dinner together. That was something that we were able to do once he got out and we were together as a family. I'll never forget this day. We were sitting at the dinner table, and my brother was sitting at the seat across from me, and my mom and dad were sitting next to each other. Daddy's sitting there eating. He goes, Vicki, how was school today? I said, it was okay.
Mm,
He said, you sure? I said, look, Daddy, it was a hard day like every day. It was okay. And he said, well, this professor came by and told me that you failed the test today.
ooh,
And I was about to choke on my food. And I said, yes, Daddy, I failed the test. Well, what happened? And I said, Daddy, I don't know. I'm going to go back through my notes and I'm going to go see him so I can understand where the mistakes were made and what I actually did wrong. I said, but I don't know because I really, really studied for this test. And he said, well, he also thinks you need to change your major. That maybe this isn't the major for you. Put her hands down on this table. And she jumped up and she said, what do you mean he came to you and told you that she can't be in this major? Who the hell does he think he is? And Daddy said, well, if she doesn't have, if she can't pass the test, she's not going to be able to. Don't you tell me what my baby can and cannot do. Vicki, get upstairs and get them books and bring them down to this table. I was like, oh my God, the dinner table is going to be crazy. So I went and got my books and I was crying. I was just crying. And so I get back to the table and said, Mom, I'm sorry. I did try. She said, don't you let them boys bother you. Don't tell me that my baby gonna fail. We ain't gonna fail. Now let's sit down here and go through this. And she started working with me every day. So, and she told my dad, don't you ever come back in this house and tell my daughter what she can't do. And don't you ever repeat a word that another man told her what she can't do. Because my daughter can do whatever she puts her mind to. And in the future, if they come and tell you, you better be sitting at the table helping her to make sure that she passes everything she needs to do. So at this point, I'm like the friction.
Yeah, not mama's baby.
He was like, not my baby. They ain't gonna happen. So she worked with me, and the biggest blessing that came out of the University of Dayton is I ended up graduating with a high B average in my major that semester. And I was in honors when I graduated for the year. But my daddy gave me my degree.
That's
and
beautiful.
So that was, having him to hand me my degree was what really meant something to me. But life goes on. So I get my professional job, and I never wanted my parents to know how distraught I was, how hurt I was. I went into my first job doubting everything about me, doubting whether I could be successful, doubting whether I made a mistake, because I'm the only Black child, the only minority sitting up in these in these offices in technology. And I was like, these people are going to make sure that I don't succeed, and they're going to be right. I can't do this. And that's what was going through my mind when I first started. So when I got to my job and started working, and going through these challenges, I kept saying, but you got to overcome this. You can't tell your mama that. She's going to have your head. You got to overcome this. You got to overcome this. So I did. I was doing really well. 6 months after I got there, I got a promotion that asked me to be a leader over a team. And I took my paycheck that came in, and I said, you know what? That man told me what I can't do. I'm going to show him what I can't do. I pulled out a piece of paper, and I sent a note to him and said, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm at my job. I'm having a great time. I just got promoted. And this is what someone who's going to fail in computer science can do. I hope things are going well for you. I'll be in touch, Vicki. And I put a copy of my check in that envelope because I knew it was more than he made. And I just got out of school. Right? Now, I have to tell you, after that, I got a little bit more confidence real quick.
Right, yes.
I saying, okay, let's do this. We're going to do this. And I put my effort into it. I was because I knew that there was anger down there I had to deal with.
Yes.
Well, I couldn't stop there because 2 years later, I got promoted again.
Yes.
I said, okay, this is the last time. But I got to do this. Hey, just checking in. I want to see how you're doing. I hope all is going well. I wanted to let you know this little Black girl who was supposed to fail, she got promoted again and doing extremely well. Thank you so much, Vicki. And I copied a copy of my check and I put it in the letter to him. And that's what I did to let him know what being non-successful really looked like.
Sometimes it is what it is, those haters, And sometimes it just takes that, for us to be motivated. There's a saying, let your haters be your motivators, so to speak. And I mean, not so much that you spend all your time thinking about them, but sometimes it's somebody saying something to you or doubting you or whatever, and what God has put within you, what your capabilities are and all of that. So whatever they said, it's like, okay, whatever. I know who I am and I know what I can do. But I just
But
want to,
that's part of that self-care though. I
yeah,
didn't know that then,
right.
but getting rid of that gut-wrenching feeling
Mm-hmm,
of somebody tugging at me and telling me what I can't do and how negative it was and
mm-hmm,
how bad I felt. The emotions that I couldn't tell anybody about that were just inside of me.
mm-hmm,
That's part of that self-care. And
right.
that's what we got to do today. We have to
Absolutely.
clean ourselves out and get that self-care and
Mm,
that self-talk and that mindfulness to get us in that right spirit. So I had
mhm,
to deal with the demons that were there that I never wanted to admit.
mhm. Someone says, haters make you greater. Yes, yes. But there's something I wanted to touch on that also happened as you were transitioning. Well, you were always working because so that was something that you just did, and you enjoy working, you enjoy being productive and things like that. But what I love is that even getting your first job, that there was like a bidding war, so to speak, or people were, kept trying to make sure that they wanted to get you on their team. So you started out in your career negotiating and advocating for yourself to get money. So I'll talk about that because that's something that even people that are well along in their career or have businesses and don't know how to price themselves and things like that. Talk about that because getting what you're worth is a big deal.
Well, one of the things I will say is that going back to UD and being a predominantly white school, they did great recruiting. Back in those days, they didn't do as well recruiting, at our HBCUs, unfortunately. But they did do a lot of recruiting. So I happened to go. My father wanted to make sure I went to a career fair, so I did. And I had a company to invite me out on a job thing, sharing everything about what they did. And I mean, they treated me like a queen. They were in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They flew me out. I had this nice hotel, took me to meals, all of this. I was like, oh, is this how rich people do it? I can get used to this real quick, right? I didn't know reality was going to set in after that. But as far as I'm concerned, I could do this, right? So they brought me out. Well, then I had a second company who was interested, and they did the same thing. Well, now you need to understand the premise. Everybody was trying to find a spot, right?
Got it.
Wanting to find a spot.
Got it.
And everybody wanted to say, I got the spot in technology. I got something you don't have.
Got
Now, whether you just occupied a chair, that was okay. But I
it.
got to have my spot. And I knew a lot of this was happening. So I said, you know what? I'm going to play this game. So
Mm-hmm.
I get a phone call, and the first company calls, and they said, look, we would really like to make you a job offer and would love for you to come out. And I said, well, I'd love to understand a little bit more about the role and responsibilities. So he's talking. Back in those days, we had call waiting.
Right.
My phone beat. And I said, can you hold just a minute? It might be for my dad. I need to make sure because he expects business calls that I let them know. So I clicked over and it was the other company. And they said, hey, how you doing? We really would like to offer you a job and opportunity. I said, oh, really? And they said, yes. And I said, tell me a little bit about the job. And so they just told me what the role was. I said, and they said, and here's what the salary would be, blah, 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 blah. I said, can you hold just a minute? So I clicked back over and I said, I'm so sorry for keeping you waiting. I said, but I have another opportunity that I can actually do. And it's really going to be doing more of X, Y, and Z and a little bit more money and blah, 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 blah. And I think I'm really interested in that one. And they were like, no, no, wait a minute. I think we can do something about that. So they made me a counter offer. I said, hold on just a moment. I clicked back over and I talked to the next company and I said, well, I really appreciate the offer. I said, but I have another opportunity and, I'm going to be able to do this, that, and the other. And the pay is such and such, such and such. And they came back and said, what will it take for us to get you now? And we
Mm,
don't have to go back and forth. I got a 40% raise in 20 minutes.
Come
Okay.
on.
So I clicked back over and told the other company I've already accepted the job. Thank you. I hang up. And my daddy said, I ain't never seen nobody get money on a call, waiting call. Where did you learn that from? I said, Daddy, I'm a good observer. I've watched y'all negotiate all your life. So I just put it to the test.
But I mean, that is such a viable skill, because how many of us don't know that, and we just accept whatever is given to us and we don't negotiate, because oftentimes we might be afraid, well, a little bit of something is better than nothing at all. But the challenge in that is when you move to the next thing or the next thing or the next thing, sometimes you can get locked into a certain space, financially, and finances, benefits, all of that, because it's all a part of the package.
Exactly.
Learn how to negotiate and speak up for yourself and understand your worth.
Value is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that value is where it's at. And so my total comp is what was that all, was encompassing of all of that. Now, after I got there, was it that people thought I was just supposed to occupy a chair and shut up? Yeah, that's what they thought.
Well, they
Did
did.
they think that I was just going to sit there and do just a day
Mm-hmm.
by day? Yep, that's what they thought. But that's not me. Now, you got to remember the stock I come from. I told you about my mama now. You got to
Right.
remember the stock I come from. And she always said to me, don't give them an excuse. You always overdo. Don't give them an excuse. So I always did more than was asking. I always volunteered for more. I always kept doing more because I wanted to make sure if I ever got the next opportunity or promotion, people could not say it was because I was Black or because I was female or any other excuse. I thought that would remove it. I was wrong. They said it anyway. I dealt with adversity that you can't believe
I can imagine.
anyway.
Yeah, I can imagine just being a Black woman. Because I mean, even today, people going into those fields, even now in 2024, there are not as many of us in those spaces. And so, Silicon Valley and all these different things, even though it's not that we don't have the abilities, not that we don't have the skill, but oftentimes the opportunities aren't made available to us. And, you mentioned, they wanted a spot, but now thinking about, we could touch on this, thinking about like DEI and the fact that people are getting rid of DEI, and we know affirmative action and all of these other things. So that's just something that people, this generation is going to have to deal with as well, because they don't feel like they have to have a spot, so to speak.
Well, the other thing, as being a generational expert, that's one of the other things that I incorporate in what I do. But being a generational expert, there's some advantages though that are coming about that I'm liking the transformation that I'm seeing. And here's the difference: DE&I started as Black only, white only. Let's just face it, that's where it began. Then we started getting diversity into diversity of thought, diversity of thinking, diversity of where you come from, diversity of all these different other things came into the mixture of diversity. So now we have this soup of all these different things into diversity. And there's still certain things that are primary ingredients in that soup, Black women, Black men, etc., that are primary ingredients in that soup that don't always get cooked the same, right? They don't get the same kinds of opportunities. But these generations, they're saying, I'm going to marry who I want to marry. I'm going to be with who I want to be with. I'm going to see who I want to see. And if that blurs your diversity line, that's your problem, not mine.
Right.
So what's happening is, as these generations become leaders, they won't have to have DNI because they're going to already be DNI, because that's going to be what the mixture of their personal lives are all about. Nobody's going to have to teach them that. But between now and that time is the gap we have to fill. How do we get through this gap of where we're not quite with all of those leaders in yet? We still have some leaders that are looking at it as, straight focus, Black and white, cut and dry, no gray, no in between, etc. How are we going to fill that time of gap? And so I think it's so imperative that as we begin to talk about, DE&I right through this space here, and
Right.
because of all the politics we have and
Mhm.
all the things that are up in the air, about benefits and things like that, when you start talking about DE&I, that's why people aren't talking about it. If I don't get a benefit off of it, it's not going to make any difference to me, then I don't even talk about it. I don't have to have it.
Right.
But my only hope at this point, and first of all, God's the only one that's going to be able to change it. So let's just face that.
Right.
He's going to have to help us change this gap. But my prayer is that the gap in this interim period will get filled by people being able to do things on what I'll call a functional level of closing the gap. So
Mhm.
that it's not because of what I look like, it's about what I can contribute and do. And it's from that value underneath. Now, there's a couple ways that will happen. And predominantly, what I think is going to happen is it's going to become the entrepreneur side. That's
Yeah.
why we have so many people starting their own business. I
Mhm.
don't want to slave for you anymore. I don't want to not be appreciated by you anymore. I want my own time, my own equity, make my own money, and make my own decisions. So
Mhm.
they go and start this entrepreneurship. And they're doing it because it's their way of closing this gap that I
Right.
don't have to come and succumb to these policies and procedures that are out there. Now, the thing about being an entrepreneur that people have to recognize in closing that gap, somebody still got to write your check.
That's true.
Somebody still got to pay you a check.
That's
So
right.
you can't be so adamant as an entrepreneur that you cut your nose to spite your face and not have any customers, clients, or anybody else, because somebody still got to write your check, right?
Mhm.
You still have to have medical insurance, right?
Right.
Or people make decisions not to have it, and then we come into a different crisis that
That's true.
people are getting sick. They can't take care of themselves. There's these insurance things you have to have. So there's so many things you have to think about on the entrepreneur side. So what happens is people start entrepreneurship as a solopreneur,
Mhm.
not having any of those bases covered. I'm
Mhm.
just gonna go do a project, get a paycheck, and pay a bill. I'm gonna go do a project, get a paycheck, and pay a bill. They're not thinking long term. They're
Right.
not thinking about insurance. They just gonna survive paycheck to paycheck. And then as they mature, they become to realize, I'm missing a lot of pieces here,
A lot.
right? In
Mhm.
terms of moving forward. So it is something that we have to keep in mind as we do that. But I think the pendulum is swinging more on that side simply because that's how people don't close that gap. I'm not going to put up with your crap anymore. I'm not
Right.
going to sit here because I have to, because I don't. I'm going somewhere else over here. Right. And so because you want to say DE&I isn't important, I'm going to make my own DE&I. I'm
Mhm.
good at being a graphics designer. I'm going to go get a project and do my graphic design, get my paycheck and keep it moving. Right.
Right.
I'm not going to have to feel like I'm in bondage by you.
Mhm.
So it's going to be important that even when people do that in that gap closure, until we get more leaders that have, already got diversity in their skin and blood and everything they do because they do it personally.
Right.
It's going to be important that those that decide to go out and do their own also remember that they have to have a process. They got to have a plan
Mm.
because rent, is still due every month.
It still do.
The landlord's still gonna come and say what my rent payment.
Right, exactly, exactly. But you mentioned personal. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because in telling your story, and I'll throw up the name of the book again for those who want to actually read the book. But in telling your story, you definitely incorporate your personal life. And one of the things, being a Black, educated, ambitious woman who is, rising up in the corporate ladder and, of course, now, being an entrepreneur, um, there were challenges that you had personally, just things that you dealt with. So, of course, a lot of if you listen to the people on the internet, the podcast bros or whoever they are, they think, if you're smart and da 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 and a Black woman, ain't no man gonna ever want you. Those sorts of things. And in in telling your stories, you went through some of that, but yet you've now come out on the other side of that. So just talk a little bit about what that has been like from a personal perspective, being a smart, ambitious woman and navigating personal relationships or romantic relationships specifically?
So I will tell you that, first of all, the thoughts of a relationship not working because I'm still fighting for my place, or when is my turn going to come, never ever crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I married my best friend when I got married that I had known for 15 years. You couldn't have told me our marriage wouldn't last. You couldn't have told me I would have run into the obstacles I ran into. He was my best friend. And after we got married, well, it's funny. The morning we got married, everybody talks about the jitters and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and swam a mile that morning, and I was getting ready for my day. And everybody kept asking me, "You nervous?" I said, "Mm-mm." "You feel any twinges?" "Mm-mm." Mama said, "Well, maybe it's because you're marrying your best friend." I said, "I don't know, but I don't feel none of that stuff y'all be talking about. Let's just get this over with. Let's do it." Right? I should know then there was something wrong. But anyway, so as when we got married, I was the one that had the stable job, and he was coming to move to be with me. And he had a 4-year degree. He was educated. He had, it wasn't like he couldn't get a job. I actually helped him find a job through a connection. He got a job. He was working. Things were going okay. But he finally came and said to me, I was pregnant. He wanted to have a baby. So I was like, okay. I told him while I was pregnant, I had an opportunity to go for a promotion that was going to move us closer to where both of our parents were. And I said, but I won't do it if you don't want me to do it. I said, because I need your support to do this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, go for it. He said, that'll put us closer to mom and dad and your parents and everything. Go for it. Let's do it. Deep down inside, he didn't want me to get that job. Mm-hmm. So while I was on maternity leave, I got promoted. So I got to stay out an extra month. And the promotion came with the relocation, which I knew was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I told him that I got the promotion and the relocation. And he came back to me and he said, that's great. You got your job. I got mine. You go there by yourself with the baby. I'm going to stay here and I'll come visit every now and then. So what are you talking about? Time out. I ain't married to do this. I did not get married to do this. What are you talking about? He said, I got to get mine. And you have already gotten yours and moved and done what you needed to do. I need to get mine and I'm staying here. Bet you stay here by yourself. I'm booking. I see you later. Goodbye. And once I moved and relocated, I was like, I can't live like this.
Right.
I'm not happy. I can't do this. I said, and I had given everything. I had helped him find a job. I had done things to support him. I was like, I can't do this. And I never threw up in his face my job or what I did. And I had work events. He came to the work events with me. But am I supposed to feel bad because you feel upset in my work event? I didn't know that until this point in time came out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so the relationship did not withstand it. And you could not have told me that would be the case. But I also know his mother had a lot of influence over that because she was one that was like, you married into a family with 2 professors and she's doing well. You got to go prove yourself. And so nobody said that mess for her. So, but for him to fall into that trap, you never could have told me he would have done that. I just wouldn't have been convinced. But it happened. So the first trial and tribulation of a broken romantic relationship as a single mom. Boom. In a brand new city. Mm-hmm. Didn't know anybody. Now I'm still, instead of being 13 hours away from home, I'm 4 hours and 45 minutes from my door to my mama's. Mm-hmm. But I was by myself.
Right.
And all the adjustments that come with that. right? In terms of making that happen. So it was very real. So after that, you get ready to get into relationships, and people say, "Well, what do you do?" "Oh, I have a job at such and such a place." It
Mm-hmm.
makes you not want to talk about what you do. It makes you not want to be proud of what
Mm-hmm.
you do. So now imagine this: I'm at work, I can't be proud because they all sitting up there trying to take away from you and trying to make you feel little like this, and you're not this, and you're here to occupy a chair and all that. I can't come home and feel proud because now you're gonna get upset if I talk about in a relationship about what I do and where I'm going. So where
Mm-hmm.
does the Black woman win?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you win? Just because you're ambitious and you're successful, where do you win? And through this experience and this time, that's when I recognize that to win is not going to happen because of anything I say or do. The win is only going to happen when the right door opens with the
Right.
right person walking through. That's the only time the win is going to happen. And so I had to wait until that moment came about. And it was a long, many years wait being alone
Mm-hmm.
in terms of moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that wasn't, that was only one part of that relationship because even while I was pregnant, and was living with him, he raped me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a forced rape. I was told by the doctor I couldn't have sex. I had toxemia. I was in the bed, and I was
Right.
supposed to not have any blood pressure, and he raped me. Now, at that time, I didn't look at it as rape. And it
Right.
was all because of his rage of me having it and then not having it, all this stuff. But I didn't look at it as rape. I was like, your husband can't rape you. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they can. Let me tell you, yes, they can. Just
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they're your husband, they don't own you.
Right.
I didn't know that. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as I'm supposed to satisfy him. He's supposed to satisfy me. So I should be able to do this, right? I didn't want to do it, but he wanted it. And I couldn't do it because was at a risk pregnancy, but he forced it. So when I began to put all these pieces together, okay, I've been raped. I have a man who's wondering when's his turn, not mine. I have all this adversity at home that I'm dealing with. What do I do? Right? Where do I go? How do I survive? But you would never know it when I went to work. I put that smile on every day at work, and I went to work my tail off. Because remember, I couldn't give him an excuse. My mama said
Right.
you can't give him an excuse.
Right.
So then what happens is we as Black women begin to pressure all of this stuff in our gut. It just goes in our gut. And it's just, it builds and it builds and it builds. And it comes out in different ways in our health. It comes out in different ways in our weight. It
Mm-hmm.
comes out in different ways in how we respond to people, our personalities, our nasty attitudes. And that's where you get mad because like, I have to put up with that crap, and I'm not going to put up with that crap. Well, you know what? I understand the sister who says it. I get it. I
Mm-hmm.
understand, right? Everybody else want to call me the angry Black woman, but I
Right.
get it. I understand it. So it's all of this pressure that we have that nobody's willing to talk about it, that nobody's willing to say, yeah, I felt that way. So I wanted to be vulnerable enough to let people know if I could make it, you can make it too, even with all the adversity that's around you, even
Mm-hmm.
with all of that. Because we have stamina we can get through, because we know we got to survive. I had a child to take care. I had to survive. I had to keep it going. I had to make it. But it was that moment that I said, there will never be a time that I can't take care and provide for my child going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I
Right.
didn't take him to court when he didn't pay the child support. I was like, he a grown man, he know what he's supposed to do. I didn't take him to court. But I would have had to pay the $1,000 to go to court
Mm.
because I had to go file the child again. Yeah, I'm like, am I gonna do that? Oh no, we're not gonna play this game. I'm not playing this game. So it was all of these dynamics that you're trying to manage,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to deal with. and then still be a human being too.
Right.
So yes, it was a rough road. It was a very rough road. But the only thing that kept me focused was taking care of my child. And to take care of a child, I had to keep a job. So I had to go to work and do whatever I had to do to keep my face together, to keep my attitude together. So I wasn't going to lose that job. So I could take care of my child.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and believe it or not, we're coming up on time here real soon. This has just been such a good and compelling conversation. I wanted to give you, the floor to talk about those things. But even through that adversity, whatever what you were dealing with at work, what you were dealing with personally, and you had your village that supported you, you because of the work that you did and getting promotions and things like that, you could afford to get help and things like that, whether it was your family or bringing people in. But ultimately, I love that you found love and have been able to sustain it. So, yes, that was then, but it's a different story now.
Yes, it is. And that's why I tell you, when that right door opens, I met my husband at the job. Now, don't tell anybody. He was a consultant and I was the client. But he was satisfying me from the job perspective, but maybe I guess he was satisfying me a different way too. But anyway, um, we got married, and we've been together. I've been married 27 years this year.
Mm-hmm.
And through it all, we've been the support system for each other. The ups, the downs, the uglies. We have our trials and tribulations like anybody else. But when that right door opens,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that the magic has been made and the touch has been made, and you're now respected for who you are,
right,
and what you stand for, and unapologetically you can be authentic, you know you got the right choice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and all that you learn not to settle. So that's what I say. Hey, I say that for me and for everybody else that's out there, not to settle, and sometimes when something's going on around you and give you pause and be like, you might need to listen to that intuition, listen to that voice that's speaking to you, oftentimes when things are going on that don't feel right.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I often, I tell people all the time, the only thing that got me to where I am today through it all was through my prayer.
Yes.
Because there were days when I thought, okay, I can't do this no more. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't survive. I don't know where I'm going, what's coming next. But when you get to that weakest moment, the garden starts to bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, woo, what happened? I told you I got your back. So if I can leave the audience with one thing, plant your seeds everywhere for everything that you desire. Personally, professionally, it doesn't matter. Plant your seeds. When the sunshine and the water hits the dirt of those seeds that God puts on, you're going to have a garden so beautiful that you can't even imagine what it's going to look like, because it's going to be the one He planted for you, because those are the only ones that are going to grow. So your time will come. It will happen. But patience truly is a virtue, and it's hard. So while you're waiting, do things that bring you joy. Do things that bring you happiness. Smile. Take that time to love you and to smile about you. Because that right door, when it opens, boy, I tell you, it's a grand door.
It's a grand door. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just two more quick things that you talk about. Oh, we have somebody. Amen. Yes. Yes to that. Amen. But yes, two quick things that you talk about. And this is just like maybe a tip for people who are either in corporate environments or, running their own businesses. I love in the book you talk about community service, and if you saw the scroll, I talk about serving the community and the importance of that. In the book, you also talk about opportunities to get on boards and things like that. So what advice would you give to women who are trying to learn and expand their networks and all those sorts of things about being involved in the community, number one, and having opportunities to serve on boards?
So one of the things I will say, when it comes to learning, the best free learning you can have is to volunteer in the community. Because what happens is you learn from others. It's a non-threatening environment. You get to get experience. And we forget as individuals on our resume to talk about, I led an event, I planned an event for so-and-so, I did so. That comes with skill sets. And that counts as valuable experience that you have. So don't underestimate what you do in the community to help you as you're moving forward. And then when you're working in the community doing it and learning something new, you're doing what you enjoy. So it also can bring you some passion, some of that mindfulness, of that happiness that you look for too. Now, serving on boards is another opportunity where you can take your expertise and be of value, whether you're serving on a nonprofit board, where you're helping in the community for the nonprofit for something you may believe in, where you're sharing your expertise to help them grow and develop. And there's power in that. Number one, you expand your networks to many people, many different industries, many different companies, etc. But two, you also gain some valuable leadership experience as you're doing it, and exposure as you're doing it. So don't hesitate to get on a board. And you can start with a nonprofit and then go to paid boards. It's nothing like having, I know many people who have retired and their retirement money is sitting on paid boards.
Okay.
So that they get that money getting on paid board, and that is their retirement money that they use, because you can't get paid on boards for the knowledge that you have, but it also comes with the experience. And in order to do that, you truly have to, there are things you have to, master. And there's many board certifications out there that you can go to. But getting on boards is very valuable. Start at a nonprofit. It could be a small board. Go to a nonprofit. You can go to a small for-profit board and then work your way up. But there are plenty of people who do retirement strategies on paid boards. So don't let those opportunities pass you by.
Wow, I never heard that before. So yes, I definitely need to dial into that, because yeah, that's a good way to do something you enjoy, and if you can get a little something back for it, that's even better. And I guess last but not least, before you tell us how to stay in touch with you, just self-care. What do you personally do for self-care, and what types of things would you suggest for women who might find themselves in environments where maybe they are, the only, or just might be very stressful, or even in running businesses, because when you run your own thing, you work harder than you work when you're working for somebody else.
That's right. So there are many different things you can do to help yourself. Number one, if you're a writer, I suggest you keep a journal. Because what happens is things that are up here and in your gut, they come through your hands and you release them. And that's both in the good and the bad. If you write down those negative thoughts and get them out of your system, you're getting rid of that negative energy. As you write down your positive thoughts of your vision of where you want to go, you can manifest it. So it works in both ways if you're a writer. So that's something you can do. Meditation is also something you can do. Affirmations are things that you can do. Now, when it comes to me personally, anybody who truly knows Vicki knows what my passion is. I love to dance. I hear music, I gotta dance. I got to move, I got to dance. That's just who I am. Mm-hmm. So my stress reliever is when I had a hard day, I come home with the radio, go. Make it, I'm ready to have it. Because when I do that, and being me. So I love to dance. So you find something that you're passionate about doing. The other thing is I love spas. So once a quarter, I would treat myself to a spa treatment. Once a quarter, I need to have a spa treatment, just because that's my gift to me, right, in order to keep myself together, right? So doing spa treatments. You find what works for you and in your environment. And last but not least, I do exercise 5 days a week for an hour. And I do it to keep to keep my body moving, because as I become more matured, I don't want to lose the functions of my body. Right. That I don't have to lose any earlier than I have to lose them. As days go by. So I do work out 5 days.
All right. Well, that's good stuff. That's good advice. So here again, if you want to actually get a copy of Game Face, that's the full name of the book, Game Face: Corporate Success Strategies of a Trailblazing Tech Warrior, and you will learn a lot of things that we talked about and much, much more. So So I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book and take a look at that. But for those who might want to work with you or just follow the things that you have going on, Vicki, I know some things have been scrolling, but are there any specific things that people can be out on the lookout for in the coming days and weeks?
Yes, I have several speaking engagements coming up that you'll learn a lot about, talking about the impact of culture and profitability. As I'm working on a lot of strategies, working with leaders to help them to understand that. There's lots I have on my website. You can download some personal assessments that you can use from a financial perspective to help you to keep your finances together. Please go and check it out. The website is vickywrighthamilton.com. Follow me on all my social media. Would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll find a lot of videos out there of a lot of different kinds of content to help you as you're moving forward. But please set up a discovery call. We'd love to have a conversation with you. I look forward to the potential opportunity of serving you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm going to let you, don't hang up yet, but I want you to let you grab some water, let you take a break for a minute while I give an announcement about next week. But thank you again so much. It's been such a wonderful conversation. You know, I'm excited to meet you in person since you are literally down the street from me. So excited for that. And we'll have to snap a photo and share it on social so you will see that it actually happened. But thank you so much for your time. Excuse me, for your time, and thank you for being here. And I look forward to learning and seeing more that you have going on, and that this will not be the last conversation that we have an opportunity to have.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity more than you know. And I hope that all of the people who are watching got a little bit of a nugget of something to take away.
Yep, something to take away. It's good stuff. Good stuff. So hold on for me for one moment. I'll be back with you in just a second, Vicki.
Sure.
All right, that was such a wonderful conversation. And, you know, thanks again to Dr. Pam for putting us together, Dr. Pam Perry for bringing us together so that we could have this wonderful conversation and really be able to dive into some things that really impact a lot of us as women. And, you know, just to hear someone's story, because I am a firm believer in the power of story and us being able to tell our stories as a way of, you know, learning how we can do better and be better, or know that we're not the only one that may have gone through a particular situation. So, and in that vein, next week, we are in the midst of Mental Health Awareness Month. And next week, our special guest, we're going to be diving into some tough things as it pertains to our mental health. And our special guest is going to be April Simpkins, who is the mother of Chesley Christ, who was Miss USA, a lawyer and a media personality who died by suicide a few years ago. But her mom is coming on to talk about her book by the time you read this, The Space Between Chesley's Smile and Mental Illness. So this is one I really highly suggest that you tune in for, that you come back for. And if you can't watch live, be on the lookout for the video, because this is just an important conversation about another person who is high performing to what people see on the outside, but was dealing with some personal struggles at the same time. So be on the lookout for this conversation next week. And until that time, thank you to everyone for joining us. And we definitely look forward to seeing you again next week. Take good care and continue to live well. Bye-bye.